So Jack is a friend, a mentor, and a great guy. Jack Hoover.
Well, thank you, Debbie. Where did you disappear to? Oh, there you are. Okay. Debbie has been a joy, really, to get to know over the years. I couldn't think of a more charming, or genuine person. Thank you, Debbie. Well, when John Twain asked me to talk on his little series, The Spirit of Entrepreneurship, he gave me the freedom really to strike out and do most anything I wanted. So, of course, the possibilities are nearly limitless. And as such, I've chosen to speak on a handful of observations on the tendencies and aspirations of those entrepreneurs in the public and not so public eye. Yet before we dive in, I'd like to utilize a concept from a fellow I admire. And he calls his concept, it's a little better? Okay, thanks in the back there. He calls this concept the Columbo tactic. And he gets this from the old television show Columbo. And as you might remember, Peter Falk played that disheveled detective, and it just seemed that right about when the bad guy was going to slip away, he said, "You know, I just have one more question." And of course, you know what happened next. So the fellow that I learned this technique from was a gentleman by the name of Greg Koukl. And when knocking around an idea or having a discussion or debate, sometimes he'd use this three-step series of questions, what she calls the Columbo tactic. Step number one was, when somebody makes a claim, he'll ask the question, well, what do you mean by that? Obviously, that's a very important question. Number two, he would follow up with, how did you come to that conclusion? And then number three, he would say, well, have you ever considered ... whichever way he was going. So haven't we all stumbled into conversations where we thought somebody meant something, they meant something completely different, and at best it was just an unproductive conversation? Well, in the interest of ensuring that we're on the same page, I'd like to use Koukl's first question, and that one being, what do you mean by that? Now, before I do that, in order to do that, I need to define a couple of terms here. So the word explain, the dictionary tells us that is to make clear the cause or reason of, and then describe, which is to tell or depict in words or give an account of. So again, to make clear the cause or reason of, and to tell or depict in words, give an account of. Now it may sound like a fine point, or that I'm possibly wordsmithing here, but the difference between explain and describe are significant given the context of what I'll be speaking about. So here's an illustration that may help. Energy and gravity are part of our everyday life, yet scientists cannot explain them. They can describe them. Explanation is elusive. This may be disappointing, but nobody knows really what gravity is. It's said that the laws of nature are descriptions, they're not explanations. Well, John Lennox, who among other things is a professor of mathematics at the University of Oxford and a fellow in mathematics and the philosophy of science, tells the story of speaking to a physicist in the UK. This was at the Atomic Weapons Research Establishment, and John asked him the question, what is energy? And he responded, I don't know. So it may be argued that entrepreneurship is like this. So here I'll provide observations and descriptions of the entrepreneur, but I won't go so far as to attempt to explain them. Now let me prepare you. In what I'm about to say, it may be a warning to those of you who have done great things, and it may be an encouragement to those of you who are still holding out for the great yet to come. I think we've all observed that entrepreneurs are typically leaders. I have two movie clips that portray the extremes of leadership. We have the hard-hitting leader, and we have the barely engaged. This first clip is from the movie 300. As a backdrop, historians tell us that King Leonidas of Sparta, he led a band of 300 against the Persians. Leonidas and all but 2 of his soldiers died in that battle, but the Persians lost 20,000. Again, historians tell us that Leonidas and his band of 300 were only survived by 2, but the Persians lost 20,000. In this clip, we're going to see Leonidas with his 300 meeting up with the larger, yet less capable band of allies.
Naxos! What a pleasant surprise. This morning's full of surprises, Leonidas. We've been tricked.
Probably more than a few hundred. This is a surprise.
Silence! We heard Sparta was on the warpath. We were eager to join forces. If it is blood you seek, you're welcome to join us. But you bring only this handful of soldiers against Xerxes? You see, I was wrong to expect Sparta's commitment to at least match our own. Doesn't it? You, there. What is your profession?
I'm a potter, sir.
And you, Arcadian. What is your profession?
Sculptor, sir.
You?
Blacksmith.
Spartans! What is your profession? You see, old friend, I brought more soldiers than you did.
Isn't that an incredible line? You see, old friend, I brought more soldiers than you did. Besides the obvious, they've been working out at Snap Fitness. And all entrepreneurs look like that. I have to say, that's a leader. Now conversely, there's an entrepreneur that represents what many of us aspire to or may already be achieving. Chevy Chase plays the character of Ty Webb in that classic film, Caddyshack. He's successful, yet disengaged as an entrepreneur.
It's just that my dad, Hank, he can't afford it. I haven't even told him about the scholarship I didn't get. I'm going to end up working in a lumber yard the rest of my life.
What's wrong with lumber? I own 2 lumber yards.
I notice you don't spend too much time there.
Not sure where they are.
Okay, did you get those lines? Danny says, I notice you don't spend too much time at your lumber yards, and Chevy, Ty Webb, responds, I'm not sure where they are. So. Well, I think there's an element in many of us who wish to create a team like Leonidas has, but also there's a part of us who aspire to the life of Ty Webb. So let me contrast another set of achievers. And from what I've observed of entrepreneurs, most follow the trajectory of one of these 2 types. In 1997, an economist at the University of Chicago by the name of David Gallinson was looking and purchasing a painting by the American artist Sol LeWitt. Now Gallinson had no inkling that this purchase was going to be the catalyst for a new significant study that would make him famous. He would end up publishing a number of papers, a couple of books, and it would be followed up by a 2006 article in Wired magazine in respect to his new theory of artistic creativity. So let me give you a quick version of Gallinson's research. As Gallinson was considering purchasing this painting by LeWitt, he called a friend in the art world to get a feel for the pricing. This friend told him that the price was too high considering the size of the painting. Now, given that this friend hadn't actually seen the painting, Gallinson thought, well, you know, there must be some consideration made for the stage of this artist's life, what point in the career he's on, and so on. Well, his friend said it didn't matter, but Gallinson thought, this has to matter. So he ended up buying the painting, and subsequently he began to collect data on art. He ran numbers and drew conclusions. He controlled for numerous variables and plotted data on 42 charts. Now, 2 major variables proved to be significant. On a chart I'm going to show you shortly, you're going to see that there are 2 curves. And they're created with the artist's age on the x-axis, and then the value or price at which these works sold at auction on the y-axis. Gallinson found that overall, the price at auction was a strong objective indicator of the quality of the artist's work. But to cross-reference that, he also looked up the occurrence of these different pieces of art in textbooks, and he found that they correlated well, so he felt good about his study. Now, Wired magazine described Gallinson's process this way. Applying the fiercely analytic, quantitative tools of modern economics, he has reverse engineered ingenuity to reveal the source code of the creative mind. So based on a study of the ages at which various innovative artists made their greatest contributions to the field, Gallinson's theory divides all artists into two classes. The first class are known as conceptualists. These are people who make radical innovations in their field at a very young age. And then there are experimentalists. These are the people whose innovations develop slowly over a long period of time based on experimentation and refinement. So let's have a look at the chart. So you can see from our chart that the age is represented on the x-axis, and the price and value is represented on the y-axis. And we have conceptualists and experimentalists. You can see that conceptualists do their finest work early in their careers, and then the value tails off subsequently. His data showed then that experimentalists, they start slow. There's a significant gap up in here between at their particular ages of what the experimentalists accomplish and what the conceptualists accomplish. Yet, by sticking with it, the experimentalists will intersect with the conceptualists and continue to do great things for most of the rest of their life, or at least of their career. Now, as the years went by, Gallinson added to this study, and he also felt that maybe there is a bit of a continuum between those two types of innovators. Now, though he initially developed his theory of data solely concerning the visual arts, he since investigated conceptual and experimental innovators among poets, novelists, filmmakers, popular musicians, and he expresses the obvious correlation with the business as well. Now, Picasso and Cezanne, they represent radically different approaches to creation. Picasso, he thought through his works carefully before he ever put brush to paper. Like most conceptualists, he figured out in advance what he was trying to create. The underlying idea was what mattered. The rest was merely execution. Now, the hallmark of a conceptualist is certainty. They know what they want, and they know when they've created it. Cezanne was different. He rarely preconceived his work. He figured out what he was painting by actually painting it. Now, Picasso signed virtually everything he did immediately, Gallinson tells us. Cezanne signed less than 10%. Experimentalists never know when their work is finished. So let's take a look at some conceptualists and experimentalists. Now, in literature, it's been said that the finest work that F. Scott Fitzgerald completed was The Great Gatsby, and he did that at the age of 29. Now, conversely, what most people think of as Mark Twain's finest work, Huckleberry Finn, he completed at the age of 50. Now we can take a look at these two artists. Picasso, in his work that translates to The Young Ladies of Avignon, he completed that at the age of 26, and many people think that's one of the most important pieces in the 20th century. Now Cezanne completed Chateau Noir, which many people seem to think is part of his greatest project, at the age of 64. Two very significant contrasts. Now let's look at architecture. Maya Lin, at the age of 23 and still a student in college, she completed the Vietnam War Memorial, which anyone who's seen that understands what a moving, significant structure or creation that is. Now, Frank Lloyd Wright did his Falling Water project at the age of 70. And again, that's thought to be his greatest work. Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg created that at the age of 19. Kentucky Fried Chicken. Colonel Harland Saunders franchised his first unit at the age of 62. Now, Facebook currently has a market value in excess of $200 billion. Kentucky Fried Chicken, or KFC, currently has over 18,000 operating units around the world, approaching 19,000. So let's consider Bill Gates. As founder of Microsoft, he was obviously a conceptualist. But with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we might argue that he has been a reinvented conceptualist. In stepping somewhat away from his role as a CEO at Microsoft and into his role at the foundation, he has quickly created an organization that's changing the world. Now, a population of conceptualists and experimentalists is obviously of great benefit to us all. Historically, geniuses have been thought of as young people, but with the concept of conceptualists and experimentalists, I think we can see that a genius may be represented by both young and old. We can immediately appreciate and encourage the young conceptualist, but it's a little more difficult recognizing the promising experimentalist. Consider the tragedy had Colonel Saunders given up at the age of 40, or if Mark Twain had died at 30. Yes, the balance of geniuses is vital for us. There are conceptualists and experimentalists among us, but we don't have the luxury of always knowing who these folks are. I've often wished people had a sort of a biography bubble above their head so we could see their background or know their story. It'd be much like those cartoon characters with a balloon that allow us to know what they're thinking. But as a point in case, I was at a TED conference a number of years ago down in Monterey, California. At the end of the day, there was a reception a few blocks away from the conference center, and as I was walking down the street, I picked up a conversation with a gentleman. And it was pretty much small talk, and after 5 minutes, we went our own directions. Well, the next day, guess who one of the speakers was? This gentleman ended up being one of the world-renowned scientists that was speaking at that conference, and not knowing really the story of these people, we do miss out on some wonderful engagement, I have to say. But let me provide one more example. A couple of months ago, I was at a gathering of business folks, and the facilitator presented an exercise for us to get to know each other better. We were to tell the group what was our first car and something unique about it. Well, mine was a 67 Chevy pickup. It was white over red. I just love that truck. 4-speed on the floor. But the unique fact was I once had 27 people in that truck. We had 3 up front and 24 in back. Well, one of the fellows in my group told the story of his first car, a Cadillac. He had purchased it from a client of his father's, and this car was a dream. It was electric everything. It had electric windows, power seats, a push-button trunk release, but the coolest thing about this car was what was mounted in the glove box. Can you guess what it was? That's right, an 8-track player. Now when you think about it, the 8-track basically culturally changed the world. For the first time, you could play the music that you wanted in your car. You weren't at the mercy of the radio DJ. So do any of you have great memories of the 8-track? Yeah, okay. Well, the fellow who invented the 8-track is right here in our neighborhood. At the age of 27, Darryl Zelke saw his name on the patent for the 8-track cartridge. So we have a local conceptualist. Darryl's career in technology continued until this year as to when he decided to call it a day and he retired. But he wasn't just an engineer. He contributed in significant ways outside of his primary vocation. 10 years ago, he helped establish a new congregation at the church across the street. His fingerprints are figuratively and literally all around that church. So, what is it about the contributions of entrepreneurs that's so important to our society at large? Well, entrepreneurs are typically creative, They're risk takers. They don't remain on the sidelines, which means they sometimes have to grow some thick skin. They understand, they operate in the tension between art and science, and they can't stop thinking and creating. And they sometimes suffer from what my neighbor refers to as entrepreneurial ADD. Now, if you live in this environment long enough, you'll have something to pass on. I would like to think that the experimentalist concept gives us hope that we can finish well. Yet conceptualists need not slide into obscurity. They can reinvent themselves. We see this in people like Daryl Zelke. I'd like to encourage you all to recognize and possibly emulate those around you that have exhibited the ability to continue to strive and contribute. And as they approach their final years in their careers, entrepreneurs have the ability to leave the business world and the general world a little better than they found it. There was a wise man named G.K. Chesterton that caught my attention with his expression, and I'm paraphrasing here. The purpose of an open mind is much like that of an open mouth. It's designed to close on something. Well, his intriguing way of looking at the world got my attention and compelled me to read more of his work. In doing so, I came across what he referred to as the democracy of the dead. It's quite a quote here, and I'm going to read it together with you. It goes, "Tradition may be defined as the extension of the franchise. Tradition means giving votes to the most obscure of all classes, our ancestors. It's the democracy of the dead. Tradition refuses to submit to the small and arrogant oligarchy of those who merely happen to be walking about. All Democrats object to men being disqualified by the accident of birth. Tradition objects to their being disqualified by the accident of death. Democracy tells us not to neglect a good man's opinion, even if he is our groom. Tradition asks us not to neglect a good man's opinion, even if he is our father. I, at any rate, cannot separate the two ideas of democracy and tradition. It seems evident to me that they are the same idea. We will have the dead at our councils." Now that's quite a paragraph, so let me unpack that for you. As I interpret it, GK is emphasizing that we benefit from those before us. We will be wise to embrace their contributions, and we need to recognize that their influence and accomplishments are to be appreciated, utilized, and built upon. In the spirit of entrepreneurship, I'd like to challenge you to take what was passed on to you by our predecessors, to add what you can, and to leave an impact that will benefit generations to come. Whether you see yourself as King Leonidas or Ty Webb, as a conceptualist or an experimentalist, I'd like to encourage you to use your unique spirit of entrepreneurship to engage with Chesterton's democracy of the dead. That's what entrepreneurs are capable of doing. So remember, they're creative, risk takers, don't remain on the sidelines, they operate in the tension between art and science, and they can't stop thinking and creating. Thank you. A lot of what he did, the values, a lot of the processes remain today. And we've just, almost like that old Memorex ad, we don't make X, we make it better. Well, we kind of took that thought, and it's like we're taking what he's done, and we just try to improve it a little bit as time goes by.
So your father shared entrepreneurship
Yes,
with you as his son.
yes,
I think that's such a gift.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. I have that great pleasure to do that as well. To share entrepreneurship with my son. And Jack has the gift of sharing it with his son too. So you'll learn. I'm a crier, so just get over it. That's just who I am. But it's a gift. And I know we have a lot of people here who just share their hearts, their businesses with their families, with their children. And that's what we have, is the gift to share that with each other. Our creativity and wanting more for the world. So thank you, Jack. That was a great talk, so thank you. So John is going to share a little bit about Marketplace Connection.
Thanks, Debbie. So what is Marketplace Connection? This is our third lunch, and we've got a great turnout. Thank you, everybody, for coming. The gentleman who is the foundation and entrepreneur behind Marketplace Connection is John Twain. And John is not here today because he and his wife are basking somewhere on a beach in Maui. When I came out of the house this morning, it was so cold that I thought of John and his wife and wish I was there. But so he asked me to share a little bit about Marketplace, what it is. And basically, the foundation of what this third lunch is all about, and future lunches and connections is all about, is good connections, good relationships do really matter. They make a difference. Have any of you in either your place or work, or maybe in your business, have you ever, like myself, have you ever contemplated giving up? Have you ever wanted just to quit? Really? 2 of you? Really? I really like what, Jack, this quote that you had here. The experimentalist never knows when their work is finished. I actually tried to quit a couple times because it just got too hard. And there was too much opposition and adversity that seemingly comes against us when we're in love with what we know we're called to do. I was with a friend the other day. I asked him, I called him by name, I said, how many businesses have you started? This is a guy that just is full of ideas. And he has a genuine heart to want to make a difference in what he is, the way he's made. And about 90 minutes later, he went through about 8 businesses that he had started and that he had passed on to others that became very financially successful, but he was never able to reap the financial successes of what he started. And he said to me, John, he said, I am ready I'm exhausted. He says, I've got so many more ideas in me, but he said, what I really want to do is have one more good run at something that really makes a difference in the life of others. Rather than the success of what I've done in the past that hasn't brought me the satisfaction of true meaning, I want one more chance, but I'm scared to death. He's my age, Jack. He's 62 years old. Kind of seemed like a lot of these guys in the best years of their life were a little bit older. And I said, I said, Terry, I said, there's been 2 times I wanted to quit. And both times there was somebody who came to me at the appropriate time and said to me, John, the best years of your life are still ahead. And that's my motto today. And I said, Terry, the best years of your life are still ahead. Don't quit. Somebody gave me that word and he said, John, that's exactly what I needed to hear today. And I said I could share that with you because 2 people shared that with me in my past years. So Marketplace Connection, what are we all about? It's only our 3rd time together, guys, but it's our dream to be able to come together and have the relationships that matter to help us be spurred on to do a better job to what we know is inside of us that just has to get out. That's the heart of what we're all about. Thanks for coming, everybody.